Who's that guy?
Okay, everything's ready. So basically the pre-meeting just streams. So whenever you're ready, just start the meeting.
Okay, I think we got.
Who do we got? Mark and Andy. Missing Randy and
Odd.
Todd.
Maybe give them just a.
So we got to get one of those guys, huh? Before we can start.
You just need 3.
Do we only need 3?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give them 1 minute. I'm trying to open up all the agendas and everything anyway, so I can look at them as we go.
Texting them as well.
Todd's on his way in right now.
Okay.
While we're waiting here, let me ask real quick. I don't know if Mayor or Rick, you need to answer this, but do we want to switch it this year and have a different chairperson? So it's more of a rotating situation.
Are you sick of it?
Not that I'm sick of it. I just know like the city council or the county commission, they do it for 1 year and then they just rotate through.
Yeah, you're right.
So everyone gets a chance to do it. And
Yeah, let me visit with Rick and we'll maybe that's a good idea, Michael. We'll plan on that next time.
okay. Like I said, I just know that's how they do it. I don't know. Obviously, city councils don't do it that way. Well, or do they with the,
I traditionally have kept mine Mayor Pro Tem for at least 2 years. So
for 2 years. So
I had Jeff Turk there for 4. So
depends how things go. So
yeah.
I know we saw, oh, I thought Todd got in there. Did he disappear?
He said he was there.
He got offended.
Eesh, we didn't say hi to him fast enough. All righty. Well, if there's only the 3 of us, let's go ahead and get started. Stephen, is it recording?
Yeah, everything's ready to go.
It is recording. Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for attending. Another month of this Zoom meetings, and appreciate everyone being here. Just looking, we've got Mike and Jake here is visiting again. This is officially Nikki's first time being in charge of running this show and keeping us all in line. Is the streamer, is that just the
Yes, the person who puts it on YouTube. Well, not a person, a computer.
okay. So, well, we've got, this is our February meeting, so let's open it up. First, we need an approval of the, oh my gosh, my mind's just blank. We need
Agenda.
motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second that. Andy.
Mark first, Andy seconded that. So I'll just say Dinsmore, aye. Mark,
Hauser, aye.
Andy.
Palmer, aye.
Okay, and we still don't have anybody else. Oh. Yep. So okay. Did everyone get a chance to look at the minutes? There was 2 sets. There's the October and January. Let's first look at the October. Did you have a chance to look at it? Any questions, comments?
Looks good to me.
I had no question. Yep, I had no questions.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the October agenda or October minutes.
I'll go ahead and motion to approve the October minutes.
I'll second that.
Andy was the first and Mark was the second. So Dinsmore, aye. Andy,
Aye. Palmer, aye.
Mark.
Hauser, aye.
Okay, and then the January 21 minutes. Any questions, comments on that?
I have
None?
no questions or comments.
Okay.
This
Can I
is
get a mo-
January 5th, right?
January 5th, 2021.
Yeah, no questions on those either.
Okay, a motion to approve that.
I'll move to approve.
And I will second that.
So Mark was the first and Andy was the second. So Dinsmore, aye. Mark,
Hauser, aye.
Andy.
Palmer, aye.
Okay, cool. Next item up was the meeting schedule for the rest of the remaining of the year. So the only comment I had, well, haven't we always just skipped the November one because of the elections?
Typically, because we've generally had other conflicts and we've tried to move it to other ones.
Well,
We
we
probably could, but I think we're generally fine to miss that unless something come up. We could call a special meeting if we needed to.
Did we do that this year? Did we have just a quick meeting that we had to have this year?
No, I think we just didn't have one in November.
Okay.
Uh,
I just remember as far as moving it, we always couldn't do it the weeks before or after because planning commissions or not planning commission. There's another group in the meeting room.
Yeah, well, historically, the council would have a work session, but they've moved that to Wednesday. So there's a chance we can if we want to, and we can maybe just play it by ear when we get closer to that.
Okay.
Just to
The
give
only
you
other question I had on it was the July one. And I know typically it's usually kind of hit either like the second, third, fourth. So it was pretty obvious to cancel that one. But I'm actually showing July's on the 6th.
Yeah, so I would think we should be okay unless everybody has plans that they already know about.
Where it gives us that day to travel if you do go out of town. I think we'd be okay if that needs to be changed to July 6th on that one. Can anybody else, did anybody else see any conflicts or questions about that?
I'll change it to July 6th because that is right. That's the Tuesday.
Okay.
I didn't see any other conflicts.
Me either.
Okay. Todd, I saw you're on again. Have you?
Yeah, sorry about that. What was the change?
We're looking at the schedule, the meeting schedule for the rest of 2021. November, we're just going to kind of leave that one since the second's the elections, and July changes to July 6th is the Tuesday.
Yeah, I don't see anything other than that.
Okay. So motion to approve the proposed dates, 21 dates.
I'll go
move
ahead and
to
motion
approve.
to.
Was that
I'll
Andy?
second that.
Okay.
It was more. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the change dates for the calendar year of 2021.
Okay. Second.
I'll second.
Okay, so Andy did the first and Mark did the second. Todd, do you want to start the vote?
Spriggs, aye.
Mark,
Hauser, aye.
Andy,
Palmer, aye.
and Dinsmore, aye. Okay. That brings us to number 4, new business. Rick, do you want to jump in here quick, or do we want just Mike and Jake to take over?
Just real quick, at our last meeting, I think everybody seemed pretty comfortable with where we were at. However, there was some recommendations to add some economic or cost wording. And so we met and Mike and Jake got those proposed changes in, and they'll present where those changes were. And then we'll just go from there.
Hey, Steve, can I have the ability to share my screen?
So given.
So given. I have to move this over here. Yeah, I remember this last. Okay, can you guys see that?
Looks like
Which
we're
screen do you
seeing
guys
your
see?
drive, but not the presentation.
Okay. Are you seeing the presentation now?
Yeah, we see it.
Well,
Okay.
do you? All I'm seeing is your desktop.
Your
with
Google
other-
Drive.
Yeah, we're only seeing the drive. We saw the presentation
Just for a second.
first.
There
we
it
go.
is.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
So everybody's seeing it now?
Yep.
Okay. So we appreciate the input we got last month on the strategic plan. So some of the things were, obviously we wanted to update the date to 2021, which is, I mean, they're all pretty simple fixes. So the changes that we have in the presentation, we left underlined so you would be able to see that. So on page 1, we updated the date, and we also updated the mission statement. We talked about having affordable power rates and service, and we wanted to go over this with you, that affordability, talks about affordability is, is power affordable, but we wanted to, we changed the wording a little bit to cost competitive, because that shows that we're being cost competitive on our side and also the side of the consumer. Because we need to be competitive on both sides. So we decided to use cost competitive instead of affordable. Are there any comments or questions on that before we move forward?
And that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be the lowest either. It just means we'll be within a reasonable window.
Yeah, I think it states that we're concerned about the cost and that's something that we want to address. But yeah, I like that. I think the wording is good.
I agree that it's general enough to cover everything that we talked about last month.
Okay. So we did add that onto the vision statement also, being cost competitive, reliable, cost competitive, transparent, and innovative service, to include that wording and that idea in the vision statement. Another thing that did come up is we wanted to add the mayor on our list of on our list of resources. The things we do for you, Mayor. So on all of our resource pages, the mayor has been included. I could scroll through those, but so he is there on the pages. Also on the resource page, we talked about we talked about changing the wholesale to cost competitive, because most people don't know what a wholesale resource is. And just to avoid confusion, we did change that to cost competitive on that slide. Were there any other comments or questions, changes that maybe you guys came up with when you were able to review this again this month?
I didn't come up with anything in addition to what we talked about before.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I think we've covered everything with the changes that you made.
Okay.
Good. Then the only thing I wanted to add, sorry, our internet connection keeps saying it's unstable. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to talk to the point for a minute about, I feel like the Power Board feels the same way that we do, where the cost effectiveness, the affordability of rates, and that is such a big issue with our customers. It means a lot to us to make sure that is at the forefront of what we're talking about. And I think that's where these changes came in the last meeting that we had. So we just wanted to reassure you that even with these minimal changes on the document, that our customers will be able to access and see that's not where it ends. We are really focused as we try to figure out how to put this plan into place and the actual action steps that we're going to take moving forward. We feel like that's where we're going to make the most progress with our customers and making a difference. You know, this document's great and it's going to be an amazing starting point, but we feel like that's where our focus is going to be put. So I hope you don't feel like, you know, that we're trying to avoid it. You know, we really are trying to make it apparent in this document, but we really feel like where we're going to make the biggest difference is going to be out in the field. We're going to go be working on things in the newsletter to help teach people. We're going to be doing Washington City Night to try to educate and inform and help people understand. And we're also working with the IT department. We're going to be doing a survey that we'll be able to send out, and we'll nail down the timing, whether it's annual, biannual, depending on the need, where we can really get a feel for how things are going with this plan and with our department. And that's where we'll be able to address and show our customers that we're actually doing things to try to make these things on the strategic plan happen. So we just wanted to make sure you're aware of that these changes are kind of minimal on the strategic plan, but we really are focused on making sure this stays an important point. And, you know, as far as the survey goes, that's something I think we talked to Mark about, you know, his expertise. We may be reaching out to you in the near future as we prepare that, just to see if there's any insight that you have, if you're okay with that.
That's great. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate it. But as far as that goes, that's our changes and our focus.
With that, we'll turn the time over to Michael again. Unless, Rick, you have anything to say?
No. So the next step would be to, you know, if you guys are comfortable with this, to make a recommendation to the council, and then the next step would be to present this to the council for their consideration and hopeful acceptance.
So do we need a motion to do that?
Yeah, we need a motion before,
All
guys. I hope you don't feel that we were thinking that was being left off, because I don't think that was at all when that recommendation got put on there. It's just, we know what everybody's talking about. And if we can do anything to avoid some of the comments and unnecessary things, thinking that we are avoiding it, just was one of those things. So we appreciate all that effort. That was a lot of work. I think you guys have been doing this for 3-4 months now, working on this. So we appreciate the efforts that you guys have put forward, putting this together so we can present it to the city council and to the community, to the public and stuff. So,
Well, thank you. And we don't feel that way at all. We actually really appreciated that input, because I feel personally like it's good to have available as a visibility factor for the public and then to move forward. So yeah, there was no feeling like you were being pushy or trying to get your way. It worked out well. I'm glad we were able to work together on it.
Good.
And we're with you. We just want to get it right. So I think it worked out well.
Yeah, it did. So, all right. Can we get a motion to recommend this? I'm trying to get the 2021 Power Department strategic plan to the city council.
I'll motion to present it to the city council.
And I will second it as long as we have the mayor on there because he makes us look good and important. I'll make the second.
I have your backs.
Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, we have Mark with the first, Todd with the second. Andy, do you want to start us on a vote?
Yep, Palmer, aye.
Todd,
Spriggs, aye.
Mark,
Hauser, aye.
and Dinsmore, aye. So perfect. All right, Rick, the 2020 capital facilities plan.
Okay, let's see if I can get my screen to share. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
So I really haven't changed anything, or I didn't hear back, any comments. So it's kind of the same issue with or approach with the capital facilities plan, that if you're comfortable with the document, the next step would be to present it to the city council, which this is the overarching document that actually will support the impact fee study and those results that will be coming up in the next month or two that we'll be presenting. So this is just kind of laying the foundation for the next step on those as well. So I don't know if anyone had any questions on the facilities plan. I'm sure you all read it thoroughly and enjoyed engineering language. So
I didn't have any questions. Did anybody else?
And no questions here.
No, I didn't either.
I didn't have any questions either.
Now, Rick, you said this goes towards setting the impact fees, correct?
Well, as part of the impact fee process, you have to come up with a impact fees facilities plan, which is basically a subset of the projects that are identified in the capital facilities plan.
Okay.
So not all projects in the capital facilities plans will qualify for impact fee to be reimbursed by impact fees. So this is the bigger plan, and then will be focused on the projects that are due to growth, basically is what it boils down to, is what that smaller facilities plan will do. And that's what the impact fee used to develop those proposed fees.
Okay. If there's no questions, yeah, just oh, sorry, I'm just looking here. A motion to recommend to the city council to adopt the 2020 capital facility plan.
And that'd be 2021, Rick?
We actually, I think it needs to stay at 2020 because there's projects in there. And the train was started down the track, and then we did the impact, or most of the impact fee study work is done. And then we had the change with the city manager. And so that kind of put a probably 3 or 4 month delay in the process. But I think this one's appropriate to leave just because of how it's written and some of the projects that are in there.
Okay, just clarifying. Thank you.
No problem.
And the projected growth, how did that, how do you do that? How do you, with as crazy as our area is, how do you come up with that type of a projection?
Well, you got to go into it knowing you're going to be wrong and try to be comfortable with that. The main thing that we did for our projections here on this table that's part of the plan, on the left where it says project here, it listed all the major projects we were aware of, and we assigned loads based on what we knew and and then assigned it to year. Some of them were 5-year projects, 3-year projects, those kind of things. And then basically you take each of those individual projects and sum them up at the bottom and then add that. The further year out were more of a percentage, but the closer years where we knew things like the auto mall, the hospital, those kind of things, and the apartments that were coming in were actually based on the best information available and transformer sizes we had. So it was more than just a percentage kind of evaluation. And of course, we've talked a lot of times, our load is highly dependent on temperature. So, again, no matter what you do, we try to get in within a reasonable ballpark, but it's never going to match exact. Yeah,
it was interesting to review what is in the works. I actually didn't know a lot of the things that we had on track for. So
yeah, and then like one of the other bigger ones, this top line up here that says Sitla, and there's some more Sitla down on 603. That was the area north of the Parkway up to the Habitat. That's actually going to probably be quicker than what we show here. The mayor and city manager maybe can address it a little more, but we're starting what do they call that? The PUD process, getting those documents, plan development documents. So that could accelerate on some of those areas a little bit. But there's generally one somewhere else that doesn't come on as fast. And so again, this is our current crystal ball, and we look at it each year to see how far, if it's coming on sooner or later and those kind of things as best we can.
Yeah, Todd, that'll actually, if what goes on 13 actually goes on, this won't be accurate. Because we have another 600 high income, or not high quality, got resort style housing project, and then we're very close to a medical center that come in up there too. So just FYI.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on, and we tried to incorporate as best we know of, timing wise and size wise of how that would come in.
I think that was the only question I had. Anybody else have any questions? If not, I will go ahead and make a motion to, what are we doing?
Recommend to the city council to adopt the 2020 capital facilities plan.
All right. Recommend that we, to the city council, that we, for the 2020 capital facilities plan.
Okay. The second.
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
didn't pop up. Was that Andy?
Andy, yep.
Okay, there it is now. Okay, so Todd did the first and Andy did the second. Mark, do you want to start vote?
Hauser, aye.
Andy,
Palmer, aye.
Todd,
Spriggs, aye.
and then Dinsmore, aye. So, okay, Rick,
Thank you.
item C.
And both of those last two items I'd anticipate, I got to coordinate with Jeremy, but most likely would be at least on the work session for the 24th, depending on how that meeting looks. So that'll be the intent, is to move that along.
If you'll send me out a reminder, I'll attend that too.
Great. Thank you. And anyone would be welcome as well when we do that.
Okay, item C, UAMPS, Smart Energy Program.
Okay, first question, has anybody ever heard of that program? I see Mike nodding his head.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the newer ones probably.
Yeah, I haven't.
Okay. What this UAMP Smart Energy Program is basically a rebate program for different appliances, installation. The city contributes, I think it was around $1,400 a month towards this program to UAMPS. They keep track of it. They work with our customers. They administer it. And so it works out really nice for us because they do the bulk of the legwork. At the end of the year, if that money hasn't been used by the program, it gets returned back to the city. And there's multiple cities involved. And it's kind of a, if you will, kind of a menu program that you can participate in different devices and so this is a list of what Washington currently participates in. And so if you get a qualifying clothes washer, and the website and then the staff at UAMPS will help the customers make sure that it's an energy efficient washer, and also on the washer that has to meet certain water criteria as well. The current rebate is $50. Actually, at the last UAMPS meeting, they're proposing to drop it to $25. We don't necessarily have to do that, but that's what they recommended. And they follow, a lot of this follows what Rocky Mountain does on their system. And so there's a rebate available for clothes washers, dishwashers, freezers, refrigerators. Obviously, the water heater would have to be an electric water heater. Different kinds of lighting fixtures, coolers, room air conditioners, smart thermostats. I suspect a lot of you may not know that this even was available. We've talked to Nikki and Caitlin, and this is an area where we could probably have some posts on Facebook, maybe in the city newsletter, to let people know that these rebates are available to them. The other one, UAMPS was proposing to lower the rebate with the evaporative cooling. The main reason on that one, I talked to Mackenzie at UAMPS, and she said that for the most part, the pricing on that has dropped significantly for a lot of those units. And it was to keep it more in line with a certain percentage of the total cost. The central air, they have to go, it depends on how efficient a unit they pick, if they have it installed and sized properly by a qualified installation company, and those kind of things. The See You Later refrigerator, in most areas except ours, they actually, UAMPS, if a customer came or called Mackenzie, she would make arrangements for that to get picked up by 1-800-JUNK. Well, they don't serve Washington County. And so what we've worked out with Mackenzie. If they can show a receipt that they took it out to the dump, we will give them the $30. Because what we're trying to do with that is you're physically getting rid of a less efficient refrigerator. So basically, if you can demonstrate that it's no longer on the system, they'll get a $30 rebate on that. And so ours is a little different than the others just because we don't have a local contractor that will pick it up from the house and take it to the dump. Some other ones that we don't participate in, and again, we don't have to have necessarily those answers tonight, but you may want to consider, is the ductless heat pump. You see those are becoming more and more popular. In fact, they just put, I think, 3 or 4 of them in the city council room. That's where it's more of a room type air conditioner, and so you can control the temperature of a specific room as opposed to the entire house. Right now, we're not participating in that, but we certainly could if you feel like that would, if the customers would like that. The heat pump, I'm not probably too excited about, but that could be considered. The gas furnace, to me, makes no sense for the electric utility to rebate a gas furnace, so that one's pretty easy. There's only one city that does commercial lighting, and there's a lot of hoops that they need to go through on that, so that's another one we could look at. And there's 2 that they brought up at our last UAMPS meetings a couple weeks ago that we may want to consider adding, is like a motion sensing light switch with the rebate, either $5 or $10, or a smart switch that, you know, you've seen them that people can control from your phone. So it's an internet-based control. Again, in a $5 to $10 range. Any questions on that program in general? And I'll talk about the last 2 items. Or what are your thoughts? Do you think we ought to lower the rebates to what they're recommending? Again, we can customize this to however we want. Or I can send this out and you guys can chew on it a little bit and maybe give you the link to the UAMP site to where you could actually poke around and see what's available and kind of a little more.
So is that a recommendation based on what they see in other cities?
The recommendation primarily was they're trying, to a certain extent, they try to parallel what Rocky Mountain is doing. On the Wasatch Front, you know, primarily, or actually, you know, a good chunk of the state. They've lowered their rebates on those devices. And I've got some slides I'll show you. The participation level hasn't been very high. And again, these are on replacement items. So if somebody's going to buy a new dishwasher, maybe we can give them an incentive to buy a little more efficient one. You know, that's kind of the idea there. And so maybe I'll do that. I'll send these slides and then a link to the UAMP site. And then maybe we can pick that up a little bit next month and kind of decide what we want to do. The other 2 items here at the bottom that are part of this program for low income, the first one, it's basically a do-it-yourself home audit, and it links to a Department of Energy website, and you can go on in there and put in your square footage, your location, and it'll give the customers an idea of some things they could do to improve the efficiency of their home, or improvements, or it'll help them see where their electricity is being used. And then the last one, again, it's a link to another, it's a state of Utah that if they're meet certain qualifications, they may be able to get some help with weatherization of their homes. Because often I think some of the people with probably the least efficient homes or appliances are the ones that probably could use it the most. And so this is a way for them to get some assistance on some of those items. So in a quick nutshell, that's what the UAMP Smart Energy Program is. Unless you have any questions now, I can show you, UAMP's put together a kind of a summary of these three areas: the home energy, which is the appliances, the cool cache is mostly to air conditioning, and then the see you later refrigerator. So this is for the last 2 years, 19 to 20. We had 3 dishwasher rebates, and then they use tables to get a rough estimate of how many kilowatt hours those 3 devices would save. Again, not a lot. We're not getting a lot of participation. I suspect there's probably been more than 3 dishwashers purchased in Washington on our system in that year. They may not be aware that this is available, and we need to help get that word out. 20 to 21, we did a little better job with some refrigerators, clothes washer, and a water heater. On the air conditioning side, in 19 to 20, we didn't have any. And this last year we had, I'm sure it was the same too. Again, they get a different rebate, or these rebates kind of add on top of each other based on how efficient the unit is, and then how, if it was installed and sized properly.
Hey, Rick, are these just replacements? Does this apply to new homes?
No, it's just replacements.
I wonder if we need to give this information to Boulevard and Home Depot and Lowe's, so their sales reps know to tell whoever comes in and buys that they can apply for these.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Okay, we can work on that, definitely. And we could do just a real simple flyer that would give them the link that they can go to the UAMP site and make sure they qualify.
I think that's the way we'd get the participation out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, is that link or is this accessible somewhere else? This is the first time I've seen this.
It's on the city site. It can be a bit of a challenge to find it, but you just go to uamps.com and then it's very easy to find it once you get to the UAMPS site. So
is that something we could include in the newsletter as well?
Yes.
Sent out.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd recommend you get that to David Woodcock and let him put that in a newsletter. It's a good idea, Mark.
And the challenge, one thing that we got to make sure, this is for people on the north side of the river on our system. That's one of the things Mackenzie is aware and does check to make sure customers not on our system that we're giving them a rebate, and then the see you later refrigerator, those numbers are higher. It's because those devices, because they've been effectively destroyed at that point, they're no longer on the system or can use power because they're being recycled, hopefully into a more efficient unit at some point or some other use for those metals and materials. And so a lot of these other savings are going to be the difference between a less efficient and a more efficient device. So we need to, yeah, you're right. We need to catch people when they're buying those appliances.
Rick,
So
I have a meeting with David tomorrow, so I can address that being put online on Facebook or in the newsletter.
Right, and I know Steve's listening, and maybe we can figure out a way with Steve to make it a little more prominent on the city website as well. And if we were to get a large participation in it, that would be a good thing. The worst case scenario, we'd have to either up our contributions to cover those costs, or we'd have to say up to, you know, and when those funds are used, they're just used up for that year. But that hasn't been a problem to date. You know, the rebates for the most part aren't huge. And so, you know, $1,400 a month goes quite a ways. You could do quite a bit of these in a given month. Any questions? Are you, I mean, just, I know I hit you kind of cold on this. Are you in favor of adding more devices? Keeping the rebates up? What's your?
I think what's there is fair. I think we should definitely keep them up where they're at.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Any other thoughts on that?
I'm good either way, either with going with their recommendation or keeping them where they're at. I think more important is that we get the word out and that people are aware of it.
Okay.
Especially with the limited use that we have right now. I think keeping them where they're at, I don't think is a bad thing at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, I agree with that as well. I mean, I definitely getting the word out so that, you know, customers are aware that this is an option, but I don't think lowering or raising or keeping the price the same is going to make a huge difference.
Okay. And I guess that would be a good problem to have if we got a big run on it, and then we could decide how to address it at that point.
As far as adding everything, I mean, you're only talking about adding the heat pump one, and I just don't think right now, I think if we had use out of it and people were doing it, then maybe we should add it. But yeah, I don't know. And the light switches and all that stuff, I think that's just going to get in a lot of confusion with everybody. Does this one qualify? Yes or no? And until we give that time for those to get more into the public, then maybe address it.
Okay.
I would leave.
Why is it that we don't offer this to new construction if the new construction are using these appliances?
Because they're not replacing.
But they're still using these instead of installing. Well, I guess some of the older ones are the ones that we're concerned about, right?
Right. That's the idea there, is giving them some encouragement to replace a less efficient appliance with new. I would certainly hope the builders are putting in at least the minimal Energy Star kind of appliances. But I'm not 100% sure, you know, what they're doing.
Yeah. I agree.
You would certainly hope, and I would certainly hope as a consumer, you would, if you're building a new home, you would say, I want to make sure these meet certain requirements. And there's some minimum standards that they have to meet now. I think probably the least efficient air conditioner that's available now is probably more efficient than probably the one I have on my house that's 20 years old. So So that's the basic idea. It's get people to replace older equipment with newer.
Does it make it easier, Rick, if we approve this now? Or if we address it again?
This is really in place, so I don't know that we even need any approval other than just, I would welcome any feedback, recommendations, or if there's a device or a gizmo that you've seen that might be good to add to the program, we could do that. There's some of these, like I said, I think it's like the commercial lighting, there's only one city that it participates in that. So if we had something that we wanted to encourage, we could add it to it, and we may be the only city. So it's purely up to us of how to set that up. The one I was going to ask him about that I haven't had a chance to talk to Mackenzie, I'm not sure why clothes dryers aren't on there. Because that's actually a much bigger load from the electrical perspective than the washer. And so I can follow on that.
Is it possible because they don't, even newer ones still require that load?
And that very, very, very well may be the case.
So even newer ones, it didn't drop it that much in comparison to these other appliances.
Right. And that very well, but I can certainly ask her that question and bring it back. So like I say, this program has been in place, I don't know how many years. It was long before I was involved directly with the city. So
yeah.
But historically, I don't think the participation's been very high, and I'm sure it's, the majority of that issue is just people aren't aware of it.
I'd say, so the question comes, those two proposals that UAMPS is going to make in lowering those two. So whether we want to follow UAMPS in lowering with those two, or do we want to add anything to it? Because it's already, the program's already in place. Or do we just want to really make an effort to get this out to the public? So I guess question number one is, do we want to lower those?
I think we kind of are under the same opinion that we keep it the same and just get the word out and then address it if it becomes an issue down the road. But I think keeping it the same is probably a good thing. I don't see a need to lower it, and I think that was Mark's opinion as well, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, I agree.
And then on the switches, we'll probably wait to see if there's any traction. I haven't had anybody ask about it. I've had one call on a ductless heat pump is all since I've been here. So
let me ask this question. This may be, I don't know, I'm coming from left field here, but in terms of what about the main boxes and people upgrading those main boxes on their houses?
You mean like the breaker box?
The entire breaker box, yeah.
No, because they don't really use any energy, so it wouldn't fall under a efficiency program. And in fact, it's if you went from 100 amp to 150 amp service, there would actually be an impact fee assessed for that difference. So,
right, okay.
Yeah, so this is, mainly just targeting appliances.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, we can take that as our marching orders, and Nikki can get with Dave and see what the best approach there, and we can get with Steve on the website. And then I do like the idea of at least educating some of the local suppliers that this is available to Washington residents on the Washington City system. And
What I'd say to do is take the current rebate amount, that graph right there, just take that part, add a Washington City logo on it, and on the bottom, the stuff that we didn't, the new add-ons and new programs, put a map of the people if you live in this area.
okay.
That's a good idea.
Rather than saying Washington City, because what'll happen is Home Depot will say, hey, if you live in Washington City, you might be eligible for this rebate.
Yep.
Instead of saying, hey, if you live in this part of Washington City.
So we need to just maybe develop a little better flyer that's more concise, take off what doesn't apply. And okay.
Put a map on there, the city logo, and just what the current rebates are. And just drop that off at Home Depot.
Okay, and then we could add the website link to UAMPS as well.
Yeah.
Go here for more information or detailed information.
Yep.
Because you go on there and some of these, they have a big long list of these devices are approved. And
yeah, so, add our website and add their website link addresses. And
Rick, is the application all online? Do you know? Like, do they submit everything electronically?
yes. Well, they have a form and then they email it to Mackenzie. So I can get with you, Nikki, and maybe get you a little more involved with Mackenzie and figure out how the best way to do that.
Okay, and I can work on a brochure or something for the stores as well.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay. On to item number 5, just regular business operations report, generation report. Rick.
All right. Well, this is probably the more boring part. But just give you a report on what's going on the system and then on you at UAMPS. So far, on the COVID-19 front, we've had a few people who've had to quarantine because of exposures. Knock on wood, so far, we haven't had anybody directly in the department get it. Some of their spouses and family members have had it, but so far we've been very fortunate in that area. So I'm just starting to work on the 2022 fiscal year budget. The first draft's due towards the end of next week. So that's where most of my time right now is getting that put together. On the generator side of things, Mike and Jake have installed a new water filter system for the evaporative coolers out there. And it's amazing what the hard water does, even though it went through a soft water, it just, we get so much calcification in the pads. We've had to replace them. And these are your typical kind of straw pads. They're about 1 foot wide and about 4 feet wide the other way, and so they're pretty large. I think Mike said the one weighed like over 100 pounds by the time he got it out of there with all the sediment that had accumulated in it. And so we're hoping the filter system will address a lot of that issues. Hurricanes used it and have had good luck with it. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that will save us money in the long run. As far as projects go, those of you on 100 South, particularly Todd, we keep trying with TDS. They've made some progress in the area. I don't know what to say. I sent another email yesterday. I haven't got a response, but as soon as they get transferred, we'll get those poles removed. I think they have 5 left. But apparently they've had to do some splicing to work around the new configuration. So it has taken them a while, but to be brutally honest, I haven't seen them there a lot either. So I'm sure you and your wife can attest to that as well. So that is not forgotten. On the Kings Road project, I'd say at least 95% of the conduit has been installed now. And they'll have the conduit work complete by the end of this week on that first phase, which is a major milestone, and the crews will be excited to not be digging in the road and all the new services in on that project. And so they'll start installing new wire either later this week, first part of next week. You probably noticed that Jake and Mike were in the switchgear room at the generating plant. That's because the council has approved us moving forward with a project to add 3 offices, a couple changing rooms, and another restroom at the generation plant. The top floor out there right now is just a big giant room. And so we're gonna break that up into some offices and provide the crews with some areas, a men's and a women's changing rooms. So that will be good. Hoskin Construction's doing that work, who did the original building construction. They anticipate 2 to 3 months to get that work done. So that's where right now Mike's been working on a table in the middle of that big room, and so we kind of had to kick him out somewhere, and that's where he landed, was in the switchgear room for a little while. So as I mentioned, the plan on the capital facility plan and the strategic plan would be to take it to the council, hopefully on the 24th. And then that'll be followed up with the other studies, the impact fee, the rate study, and those kind of things will be coming shortly. On the safety side of things, we've had 2 department-wide safety meetings, one on a bucket truck rescue, where they have to demonstrate the ability to get somebody down if they were hurt in the bucket, and then confined space entry requirements underneath our switchgear. Virtually all of them have a little basement underneath them that's about 5 feet by anywhere from 4 to 6 feet tall, that they get down and can work on the cables. And anytime you enter those, you have to have a air sensor to make sure you've got oxygen to breathe and there's no other bad vapors or whatever down there. So again, Wayne does a great job on making sure that safety is at the forefront with our crew. B.A. Robinson has completed this year's system-wide tree trimming. The only thing really left on that is Wayne's just going around to verify and make sure, one, did we catch all the trees, and or are there any that need further trimming? But they usually do us a really good job, and I don't anticipate anything significant. There may be 1 or 2 trees here or there, but that's done very well. Again, Nikki's she's the one now keeping the department on track, and Jessica's last day was yesterday, so we're looking forward to working with Nikki. She's doing a great job, and as you can see, she's willing to jump in and help out on anything. So with all the new subdivisions going in, the crews 2 or 3 times a month energize another section of a subdivision. So we work with the contractors on that. Mike continues efforts on updating the GIS information. And again, that's a kind of a work in progress that will take a long time to get it to where it needs to be, but it's becoming more and more of a useful tool as the data gets more accurate, more complete in there as he goes through. Let's see. Jake's been working really hard on the SCADA system. He's made a lot of progress. We've got Parkway and Staley on the with the new hardware that we're using, and he'll probably move on to Coral Canyon next on that. So that's the main thing on, as far as on the system proper here in Washington. Any questions on that before I go on to UAMPS? Okay. On the UAMPS front, it's actually overall fairly quiet meetings. The meetings continue to be held virtually. From a personnel standpoint, I doubt any of you have ever met Marshall Empey, but he was the main contact person with transmission agreements, interfacing with Rocky Mountain Power, and he'd been with the organization, well, since even before UAMPS was UAMPS. But he's retiring. However, they hired a new replacement. Her name is Rachel Matheson, who actually they hired from Rocky Mountain, interestingly enough. I think that was deliberate. So she has a really good understanding of those contracts, and she's been involved with the Washington County area for probably the last nearly 10 years. So she's familiar with the needs down here. She just kind of has to flip her hat around now and look at it from the UAMP side instead of the Rocky Mountain side. So she'll be a great addition. UAMPS is also working on their budget. Their budget year starts April 1st. And so I have a budget meeting tomorrow on that. Nothing too earth shattering on the UAMP side, other than probably the biggest cost increase on that has been the insurance rates on several of the projects have gone up fairly substantially. Some of it coming in because of the fires in California the last couple of years. So there's been some pretty good rate increases on the insurance for, like, the Vail project is one that got hit pretty hard. So on the Central St. George project, which is the local transmission one, really we continue to work with Rocky Mountain to get the relaying scheme in place before this summer. And there's a group called the Southwest Technical Task Force, which studies the system. That has participants from UAMPS, Deseret, which is Dixie's equivalent to our UAMPS, as Deseret is to Dixie, Rocky Mountain Power. They all work together to come up with a kind of a one system plan down here. And so that group is meeting and have started working on the load flows for this upcoming summer to identify any weaknesses, or they simulate if this line goes out, what do you have to do to serve the load a different direction, and those kind of things. The Payson project, again, I just got a report today. It was available 100% in January. I think it ran 20 days. And again, this time of year is primarily based on economics. If they can buy it cheaper, they won't run the plant. Or if it's cheaper to run the plant, they will. We have also formed in that project, they call it an ad hoc committee. We're looking into if there's ways to reduce some of the costs for the chemicals to treat the water or the power consumption when the unit's not running. I don't know how many of you know, but the water source, the primary water source for that project is the sewer effluent of Payson City. So depending on what comes out of that, they have to treat it to different levels to make it acceptable to run it through the cooling tower. And they've had some struggles with cyanide there, and they're working on finding that source. It's only been there for a couple months, so they've been running on culinary water the last couple months. So Vail's been running really well. They had a capacity factor of 96%. In fact, this time of year with it cooler, sometimes we get a little bit more than what our allocation of a megawatt is. Sometimes we'll get up to like 1.1, just because with the cooler air, they can cool the pentane down that goes through the cycle. Probably one of the biggest areas that we need to be aware of and kind of continue to monitor, and we've talked about it, is the government and public affairs project. With the change of administration, Mike Squires is, keeping a close eye on what things are being proposed and how it may affect us as electric utilities. I don't know if you've been following the part of the Biden, some of the things he's pushing for is to have the electric sector 100% carbon free by 2035, which is actually, I think, amazingly aggressive. But depending on how much traction that gets, it could have obviously some impacts on us directly and what resources are even available to try to buy. The good news is he's been supportive of SMR, or the small nuclear reactors. And really that's about the only way they could even remotely achieve that type of goal, in my opinion, is to have a lot of nuclear go in. And again, you've been involved with the project now that we're involved with for quite a while. From start to finish, to get one of those plants online in 14, 15 years is actually a pretty aggressive timeline. He wants to put in across the country 500,000 electric car charging stations. Again, that'll shift load from one energy source to another energy source. So while we're tightening the availability of power on one side, we're adding load on another one. So a lot of things to try to keep in mind. Another thing that UAMPS is doing in that group is they've got some legislation they're trying to get through the state as far as wildland fire protection plans. And the intent of that is if, as you saw in California, some of those utilities basically were bankrupted by some of those fires. And what this plan would do, or what this legislation is attempting to do, is if a utility has a plan and they follow the plan and still something happens, they wouldn't have that same level of liability. And so the goal of that is to get the legislation through and then to develop a template document that we could adopt. We're not too exposed to wildfires, other than we have some well lines up in the habitat. Fortunately, there's not a lot of structures up there, but if you were had to pay the bill to fight those fires, it would get pretty expensive pretty fast. And so that's something we're monitoring on. As far as new resources, I think we talked a little bit about these two last month a little bit. There's a solar project in New Mexico near the San Juan generating station. The overall interest level was lower than they had hoped, and so UAMPS is going back to see if they'll still honor those same prices. If they will, it'll probably be moved to they call it a study phase. So where they'll work out some of the details on transmission and those kind of things. So we have a clear picture of what the end cost would be if we decide to pursue that as a formal project. And kind of a cousin to that is the Muddy Creek Heat Recovery Project in Wyoming. Washington was an original participant in that, and they kind of put it on the shelf for a while, and now that's being brought back. We'd have anywhere from 1 to 2 megawatts of rights to that. And again, anticipate at the project or at the meetings in 2 weeks, that would move to more of a study phase that will pin those numbers down a little better. And as we get those details, we'll bring those to you for review and consideration. So we're continuing to look for resources, that make economic sense as well as meet our needs. So right now, our next immediate need is this upcoming summer. And as we've done, at least since I've been here, the city has purchased a high load product, which is basically from 8 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. There's 16 hours. And years past, the pricing has been pretty favorable. This year, I think a lot of it's a reaction to last year's power pricing, but right now the initial cost for July and August is up to $160, which is more than double what it was last year. However, I met with Jeremy and Jake and Mike, and we didn't feel like we needed to buy at least a certain amount to feel reasonably comfortable going into the summer. So we put in for 6 megawatts for those 2 months. They hope to have the pricing back on that by the end of the week. The initial or the most recent discussions I've had with UAMPS was that the price was coming down, believe it or not. The storms last week potentially lowered those prices by about $20 a megawatt hour. I guess tying into how much hydro people are speculating will be available in the summer. So the more water, the lower that price could come. But it's going to be, I think no matter what, it's going to be quite a bit more than what we've had in previous years. But I think we'll be okay as far as, money wise. And even with those 6 megawatt purchases during the peak, probably 3 to 4 hours in the late afternoon, early evening, we're still going to be on the market anywhere from 15 to 20 megawatts. So we didn't dare buy more because the hours before that we wouldn't need it. And so it becomes a bit of a challenge to meet those 3 or 4 hours there in the late afternoon and early evening. Any questions on that? Because that's probably the biggest, financial issue that we got coming up. But and again, I'm not worried about being able to cover it, but it does give you some level of concern going into the summer, knowing that they're already talking about pretty high prices. I think
you said we did purchase it at 160 for that time period.
That's an upper ceiling right now that we said if they can buy it for 160 or less, we would do it. If it's above 160, we'd kind of start over.
And that's what you were saying is by the end of the week, we'll know better what that.
Correct.
Okay.
And the latest word I had was that had come down to about 140, which again isn't great still, but it's better than 160. So
we just pray for more rain.
More rain, and that people won't get quite so paranoid on the power market right now. So.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Is there anything, Rick, that we can do to kind of prep and talk conservation with the public?
We certainly could, encourage people through newsletter. However, I guess our communication to our customers primarily through the rates. And to a certain extent, if you're using more, you're going to more likely be in the higher tiers. And so hopefully that provide some incentive to conserve. But that's going to be, the monetary, I think, will change behavior quicker than, if we go and say, well, everybody raise your thermostat to 80.
No, they'll fight you.
Some may do that, but most aren't because there's no economic tie to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can we offer some kind of shade tree incentive?
Well, that's not, as long as it's not under a line that we have to trim trees.
Yeah.
But I think there are utilities that have done programs similar to that, and that's the idea, is it may, reduce load a little bit during those times a year. So, yeah, those kind of ideas, throw them out, even if they sound a little bit out of the box, we certainly.
I did my part with solar, so.
And you got batteries too, so we'll call.
Right, we'll wait for the report on that.
I think I was at $0 my power bill this month, is what my wife was saying. So that's pretty good.
Yep.
Okay.
Don't expect it in the summer.
Depends. If it's raining, then yeah, it's going to be up. But if it's sunny, he'll be in good shape.
Right.
Depends on how many air conditioners he runs, but that's good. That's good. But certainly, the worst case scenario is if we couldn't find resources, we might have to put out some level of public plea to, do what you can to conserve, wash your clothes and dryers at times other than this. And, we probably get some traction, but I would doubt we'd get a lot just because there's no economic direct tie to that.
What did you say those main hours were? 8 a.m. to when?
Well, the high load hour period is from 8 to 11 p.m., 8 a.m. in the morning to 11 p.m. at night.
Okay.
But our real challenge hours are about 3 to 4 in the afternoon to about 8 o'clock.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
And I actually did ask UAMPS to look in, they call that period the super peak. And that pricing for a product for those 4 hours was $360 a megawatt hour.
Wow.
So we didn't sign up for those.
Yeah.
But so that's just gives you an insight of what the power markets are at least right now anticipating. It's hard to tell. It's kind of like the stock market. If you can outguess it, you'd be really rich.
Yeah. So this past August, was it August when we were purchasing when the prices went to 1,000?
Yes.
Per kilowatt hour? Okay. And we had how much of that did we have to purchase?
It gets blended down through the pool. So our average pool prices, I believe, were about 150 at that time for August. And that's a blend of cheaper ones at different hours and those real expensive ones on those high hours.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
And again, the year before that, the average pool price for the summer was probably 70 or 80. So last year during August was about double what it was the previous year.
I noticed.
And our generations are already running, so that's not an option, right?
Correct. During those period of time, we'll generally start the units 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon and run them to 10 or 11 at night.
Don't we have 2 more bays in that warehouse?
We actually have 5 bays.
We have 5 bays. Do we need to look into that? Is that not economically feasible?
Well, it's an interesting thing that you mentioned that. Jeremy and I have talked, Mike and Jake as well. if you look at the overall cost to have the units there and the amount that we use them, our average cost is about $150 to $160 a megawatt hour. Could we add more? Certainly, and that's probably the quickest way, but a 2.5 megawatt unit is about $2.5 million. So, and you throw in things like what's the federal legislation going to do to fossil-based sources? You'd have to get your money back. If they were successful by 2035, you'd have to be able to, get your return on investment in a fairly short period of time. So those are all options, but
because I've been thinking about solar, is there any incentive as far as city buyback from solar? If you're running it from 2 to 3, or if you're using, that's your high hours, I can't imagine. I would think that there would be enough solar available at that point if someone did have solar, that they weren't using it in their home.
Well, and we do buy it back at the,
yeah, but it's not.
So
it's not really great.
Their most economical time to do that is, or the best economics, like we've talked, is if you offset that high tier rate. So if you're offsetting that 13-cent tier, you're actually effectively getting a 13-cent deferral. If you're not into that, if your solar is deferring you from keeping you out of that highest tier, that solar is basically producing at 13.7. So the challenge is, I guess we could do something during the summer. There's a couple with solar, is the rest of the year I can buy it for 2 cents. So to have an overall policy, so right now our policy, if we buy it back at 4 cents, that's actually higher than most of the year's market rate. Does that make sense? Except for those 2 months, these solar projects that we're getting into, they're 28 to, I think, 32 cents. So, or excuse me, 3 cents to they're 32 mils, which is 3.2 cents. So we're actually, this time of year, we're paying more for local solar than we can buy it effectively on the market. And so that's where it gets a challenge, unless you had a different rebate rate during the summer. And then the other side of that is solar starts to drop off about the time our peak comes on. So the chances that the solar is going to be producing.
Why is that? When you run the generators typically between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, I don't understand why. Isn't that your peak when you're running your generators, and isn't solar providing it power at that point?
Solar's going to peak about 1 o'clock, at solar noon, basically. We start our generators about 2 or 3, but that goes back to over peak. We still have to buy on top of our generators 15 to 20 megawatts. So even with the generators going full bore, we still have a substantial amount of load we have to buy. And if you look at the solar curves, it starts to drop off about, it comes up and peaks about 1. And then depending on the system, if you've installed more panels than what your inverter can put out, it'll flatten it there during the early afternoon or mid-afternoon. And then as the solar comes down, it'll start to taper off 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, about the time that the loads start to ramp up. And I don't know if I could find it real quick. that post-peak report that I
That's
shared.
all right. Yeah, yeah, and I've looked at those in the past, the duck curve and everything. So
Yeah, and
that's
so
fine.
it's that idea is what's happening. And so during those super peak hours, solar may help a little bit the first couple, but it doesn't do a whole lot in the last couple. And that's actually, to be honest, that's why the price goes up so high, is the solar is dropping off. And so all that's left is the fossil resources. And so they can start to charge more or less whatever they, the market will bear at that time. Because you even look at, like in July, the early afternoon pricing isn't usually too bad until you get about to that 4 o'clock. And that's because solar's coming off, and it does go back to the duck curve and that whole challenge there. And so the electric peak occurs about 6 o'clock, and then there's a kind of a secondary peak about 8 o'clock, because solar at that point is basically gone, but the heat of the day is still lingering around and the air conditioners are still going. So does that help? So, but yeah, it gets a bit complicated to try to figure out, to do that. So, and that'll be, we've signed up for, we've got the Navajo solar project that will come on, I think it's March of next year. And then we've got the steel one that'll be in December of 2022. And then we're looking at the other. And so that's going to help us during those afternoon hours, but that peak in the late afternoon, early evening, we're going to have the same problem with resources there, even though we bought into those. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions, thoughts on that? Okay. On our wind projects, Horse Butte actually so far this year has had overall kilowatt hour output higher than originally budgeted, which is a good thing. Challenge is there, it's not always when you need it most. Like yesterday and today, it was producing at the full, almost our full allocation, but we didn't need it. During peak last year, last August, when we really could use it, it wasn't blowing. So that's the challenge. Even though overall it's produced more kilowatt hours, the timing of that may or may not be advantageous to us. So, however, we're looking into, or UAMPS is looking into doing a study on, they have enough land up there to do a second phase. And if we keep the same percentage, we have about 3/4 of a megawatt available on that. And so again, that's one of those that will be moving more into a study project. And then we'll bring that back when we have a little more specifics to present to you. On the CFPP, not a whole lot of action there, other than that the first 2 task orders were awarded in January, and that's to update the estimate for March and decide whether they want to go with a 6 or an 8-pack unit, and beginning some of the site work for the COLA. They did report that they've sent out 3, they call them letters of intent, to 3 different entities, a joint action agency, and a couple individual utilities that have expressed interest in the project. And their goal is to have hopefully 2 or 3 more power sales contracts signed by June of this year. And a couple of them are about in the 25 megawatt range. One of them they reported could be as high as over 100 megawatts, which would be really good for the project. So that's the main thing that UAMPS is focused on. That by the end of March is when those updated cost estimates are supposed to be in. And we're going to know a whole lot more at that point. So it'll be at our April Power Board meeting. We hope to have a little more detail on the CFPP. So that's kind of UAMPS in a little bit of a nutshell. Any questions? That's kind of what I had put together for the general report stuff.
Any questions or?
Yeah, no questions here.
Yep, no questions.
Nope, I don't.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Rick. Any other issues or stuff that we need to talk about or?
It looked like Nikki sent a chat. I think, Nikki, we decided to probably right now not have a meeting in November. Isn't that what we decided?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't exactly sure. I knew you said the 9th maybe could work, so I'll just move it off there for now.
Yeah, unless something were pressing that we needed to address, then we just find a time and schedule it.
Okay.
Okay, if that's it, we just need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
So Mark did a first, Eddie did a second. Todd, would you start vote?
Spriggs, aye.
Andy,
Palmer, aye.
Mark,
Hauser, aye.
Dinsmore, aye. So, okay. Thank you, everybody. Till next month. What is it? March
2nd.
2nd?
See y'all. Thanks for your time and your input, Power Board. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll see you around.
Thanks.
Okay.